Hello, and welcome to Wizardry.
Hey gang, welcome back. It's that time of year again. It's November. We'll let everybody else have October. It's overdone. So, this is my first part of a two-part series, and I make the display base, make the terrain. In the next one, I'll paint the miniature. I hope you like this. I had a blast doing this, and I'm really looking forward to the end product. Without further ado, let's make some magic happen.
This project starts on the workbench in the garage with a chunk of old 4x4 post and an old cedar shingle. I was looking for a rustic feel to the project, and I thought this was the best starting point. After cutting a chunk of the 4x4 as the plinth, I drilled holes through the shingle and into the wood chunk, gluing them together and securing them with wooden dowel pins. I scored the backdrop with a utility knife before snapping off the sides. I wanted the backdrop at the same width as the base, but I didn't want it to look cut. I wanted a more natural flow to it. I then sanded any splintering along there, as well as bringing out the grain in the base and smoothing the face of the backdrop for future applications. When it came time to stain my new display base, I used cherry stain shaded with a bit of dark walnut. I mixed up a quick wash adding Noosh by Pro Acryl to extend my working time while blending the wash into the existing stain. And I must admit, the addition of the Noosh was a great idea on my part. It made the process much easier and less worrisome. For a canvas of sorts to paint on instead of straight onto the wood, I chose a scrap of heavy drawing paper. And in keeping with the rustic theme, I chose to shape it by burning the edges before affixing it to the backdrop using Mod Podge. When it came time to paint the background scenery on the backdrop, I was pretty skeptical. I hadn't painted anything like this in quite a long time, and I'm no Bob Ross. I began laying down the base colors with just Apple Barrel craft paints. I wanted to first establish the basic hues and shapes of the concept in my head. Once again, I used Noosh to extend my work time, and it worked great with craft paints. I switched up paints for the next step, opting for my Nightmare Landscapes paints. I began to feel slightly better as I progressed by channeling my inner Bob Ross and trying to apply the things I'd seen him do, and by remembering the things Nancy Wright, my art teacher, had taught me a long time ago. With these tools and some trial and error, I was making progress, but I needed to step away for a bit and return with fresh eyes after working on some of the terrain for this project. I was thinking an African savanna look, so I thought a termite mound for our knoll to stand on would be appropriate, and probably a tree as well. I used tape, cardboard, and aluminum foil for my base construction, and I wrapped it in PVA-infused air-dried clay, slowly adding layers to build interesting features and contours. I used my brush to both apply additional PVA glue and as a sculpting tool. I also used the bristles to add texture by stippling the clay as I went. I love sculpting, and I love creating natural or imaginary subjects, like trees, rocks, creatures, or in this instance, a termite mound. It's so freeing to just create, and what you end up with is now a part of a new reality or a slice of time straight from your hands. Whoa, dirt alert. I finished off this step by using a very stiff bristled dry round brush. I was able to get an additional texture from this brush, and I also helped absorb any standing or pooling glue and water. Once it was dry, I was pretty happy with the overall appearance. I did experience some cracking in areas though. I should have added a little more PVA glue to the clay, and I could have alleviated this, but we have tricks up our sleeves for just such an occasion, and we'll flex those muscles later. But first, let's paint. I began the primer coat for both the termite mound and for the tree with Vallejo black through my airbrush. I then used Vallejo Gray Primer for my mid-tone undershading. I'm all out of white primer, so my highlight undershade I applied by dry brushing, using Apple Barrel craft paints again. With my background established, it was time to break out the Pro Acrylic paints. I wanted a purplish hue to the storm raging in the distance. I had envisioned sheets of torrential rain obscuring the features of the terrain on the horizon, and dark, menacing clouds churning in the sky, heralding in an ominous presence. Huh, another nerd alert! And what kind of storm would it be without some lightning streaking through the sky, beautiful yet relentless and destructive? And of course, if you're going to do an African savanna, you need to have grasses. As a kid, oh heck, even now, I dream of seeing the seemingly endless sea of grass and the immense herds continually migrating following the rains and the bounty those rains produce. My initial intention for this piece was to paint in the burned edges around the raging storm within. So I began by laying down grays and black to achieve my gradient of colors, and then glaze and stipple to produce the burned effect. But if you watch this channel, you know that inspiration strikes like lightning, and boy, did it this time. As soon as the new idea was sparked, I immediately abandoned the original concept and began preparing the edges for this new, much more colorful and dramatic approach. Although I did have reservations that maybe the concept, though sound, may be above my skill level to convey convincingly in this project. After all, GNOLLVEMBER is my baby. I want very much for everyone to enjoy these videos and to look forward to them every year. Not to mention, the model I chose for this diorama is badass, and I'm so pumped to see it painted and living in this new world. So after the undershading prep, it was time to add that flash of color. I had already been experimenting with my fluorescent Pro Acrylic on the Lightning, but now I was cranking the volume up to 10. When painting the undershade and during the application of the fluorescence, I was very heavy-handed, making sure to apply thick paint and leaving brush strokes and texture to give the new Lightning perimeter some 3D aspects. I really want to hear from you on this. So, how do you think it looks? Does it look like lightning? Does it fit the piece? How do you interpret the scene? And as long as you're there, give me a like if you like the video, share with anyone who may like it as well, and subscribe to be updated when I release a new video. All easy, all free, and all help me out a lot, and are deeply appreciated. Satisfied? Pretty much. With the backdrop, I began work on the terrain display. After tracing a footprint, I began building the terrain surrounding the mound, beginning with homemade sawdust flock. When building this terrain, framing the mound, I built it up vertically, adding a variety of flock, sand, grit, and rocks, adding watered down PVA between the layers, and gently tamping the layers together. I was extremely excited to get back to the tree and to the termite mound because it was going to be my first time using my Pro Acrylic transparent paints my wife Chrissy had purchased for me. She even said that if this video gets me to 800 subscribers, then she'll buy me some more Pro Acrylic. Nod, nod, blink, wink, nudge, nudge. The termite mound is definitely a main feature, and I wanted it to have a distinct look, so I chose a reddish orange for this lump of soil matrix. I could have done a better job staying in frame, but the Pro Acrylic Transparents could have not done a better job. As I stippled and brushed the colors back and forth, they never muddied, even when I added purple into the shadows. I used a mixture of Mod Podge and craft paint to seal and prime my matrix on the base. I then dry brushed a more traditional earthy tone onto the mound to desaturate the orange and red tones a bit, before moving on to the base to establish the tones in the soil surrounding the termite mound. Ah yes, the grasses. I'd imagine you already knew that there'd be tall, luscious blades of savanna grass, didn't you? I find it very advantageous to have several types of old paintbrushes close at hand to expand the variety of grasses available to me when doing dioramas. Large diversity of tones, lengths, and shapes make the terrain look more authentic and natural. I decided to add a bit of greenery to clean up the edges, add special features, and to hide the cracks in the top of the mound. Although these additions may not make it to the end product as they appear now, I like the greenery, but I'm not fully convinced it feels appropriate in this piece. What are your thoughts on this? I'd like to know. A several time used and washed bounce fabric softener sheet along with craft paint, PVA glue, and water mix were perfect components to achieve the final element of this display base. I had chosen this side of the base especially for the large crack, which will be the hidey hole for some terrifying arachnid lurking somewhere within the depths of the mound and the tall savanna grass. And so here it is, finished but probably not final for my November display base. Now it's time to get cracking on the proud, majestic knoll that will forever stand menacingly surveying the vastness of their kingdom. Thank you so much for coming along with me on this journey. I appreciate every view, share, like, comment, and subscription. I hope you like this video. I hope it helps you or inspires you on your next or current creation. My November Part 2 video will be out as soon as humanly possible. Until then, thanks again for watching, and until then, make some magic happen. As always, I'm Wes, and this is Wizardry.